Deep beneath the desert, inside an old military research base, worked a quiet man named Ethan Cross. He was not a soldier, he was not famous. But in the world of science, Ethan was a genius. His job was simple: to study energy coming from a strange crystal found on Mars. For years, Ethan worked alone. Others came and went, but he stayed. He believed the crystal wasn't just a rock, it was a doorway. A doorway to another world. On one silent evening, something strange happened. The crystal began to glow, brighter than ever before. The lab's computers beeped and flashed. Red lights blinked across the control panels. Ethan stepped closer, typing. Commands sweat on his brow. "This shouldn't be possible," he whispered. Suddenly a pulse shot from the crystal. It hit the metal floor and spread like lightning across the room. The air turned heavy, and a deep hum filled the lab. Alarms blared, glass shattered. Then, silence. All the staff in the base collapsed, unconscious, except Ethan. He stood. Frozen, in the center of the room, the air twisted like smoke. A bright purple circle appeared, floating in midair. The edges glowed with symbols Ethan couldn't read. It looked like a portal, a real one. Then something stepped through. She was tall, elegant, and otherworldly. Her skin glowed a soft violet, smooth and flawless. Her long black hair flowed as if underwater. Her eyes were silver, glowing endless. Small horns curled above her temples, and her outfit shimmered like dark stars. She looked at Ethan and smiled. "You opened the bond," she said in a voice that sounded like music. Ethan couldn't move. His heart pounded. His legs felt weak. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaking. "I am Seraphine," she replied, bowing slightly. "A gift-bound entity from the realm of Eros. You are now my summoner." Ethan blinked. "I didn't summon anyone." "You did," she said softly, walking closer. "You opened the crystal. You touched the desire hidden inside. That was the key. Now I must grant you 3 gifts. 3 gifts, he repeated. Double quotes, yes. Anything you wish, Seraphine said, her silver eyes glowing brighter. "Ask, and I will give." Before Ethan could speak again, all the lab's cameras sparked and exploded. The lights flickered. The floor cracked. Time seemed to freeze. Then Seraphine floated off the ground and appeared. Ethan, overwhelmed by everything, the beauty, the danger, the silence, took a deep breath. His lips moved slowly. I want you to stay," he said. "Not as a servant, not for the gifts. Just stay. Talk to me." Seraphine's glowing eyes widened. She stepped back slowly, her face turning red. Her hand touched her cheek as if checking for heat. Confused, shy, even embarrassed. No one has ever asked that," she said quietly. Ethan stared, unsure what he had done wrong. "I don't understand," he said. "Was that a bad wish?" Seraphine shook her head, trembling slightly. It was pure. The lights returned to normal. Machines powered back on. The portal behind her faded into mist and disappeared. She took a deep breath and looked at him again, this time not with mystery, but curiosity. "You are different," she said. Ethan smiled weakly. "That's what people keep telling me." Behind them, alarms restarted. Emergency lights flashed red again. Someone shouted over the intercom. Backup teams were waking up. Seraphine lifted her hand and all noise stopped. "No one will disturb us for now," she said. "Your wish has been accepted." Then she did something unexpected. She sat down on the floor of the lab and looked up at him like a normal person. "Tell me," she asked gently, "what is it like to be human?" Ethan sat beside her, unsure whether he was dreaming or still awake. The world had just changed. A beautiful alien creature from another dimension had just offered him 3 wishes, and all he asked for was company. In the hallway, soldiers gathered behind locked doors. Scientists scrambled for answers. But inside that lab, 2 strangers from different worlds simply talked, and in Seraphine's silver eyes, a new light sparked. Something she had never felt before. Something called hope. for a long time. Ethan and Seraphine sat in the ruined lab, surrounded by broken glass, dim lights, and frozen monitors. But neither of them seemed to care. They spoke quietly, as if the world outside had disappeared. Ethan told her about Earth, about people, laughter, fear, and dreams. Seraphine listened like every word mattered. She had lived for centuries in a realm ruled by lust and power, where emotions were used as weapons. What Ethan's words, they were something new. She watched his face closely. The way he smiled, even when talking about pain. The way his voice changed when he spoke about stars. It fascinated her more than any desire she had ever felt before. "You're strange," she finally said. "I get that a lot," Ethan replied with a soft chuckle, but deep inside, he couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. This alien woman, this so-called succubus, had appeared from nowhere, claiming to grant him 3 gifts. He hadn't even used one properly, yet the lab had already repaired itself. The staff was still unconscious, and his body, it felt different, stronger, healthier. His old back pain was gone. Even the burn mark on his arm had vanished. He looked at her again. "That wasn't just some magic trick, was it?" Seraphine tilted her head. "You asked me to stay. You wanted connection," so the universe responded. "The bond made your wish real, in more ways than one, but I didn't ask for healing." "You didn't have to," she said softly. "Desire isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers. The bond hears even what you hide from yourself." Ethan was quiet for a moment. He didn't fully understand her words, but he believed them. Suddenly, the room grew cold. A warning light blinked on a far wall, then another. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "They're waking up," she said. "The staff." "No, the Watchers. The ones who fear what they don't control." She stood up slowly, her hair floating around her like smoke. "If they see me, they will try to lock me away. Dissect me. Use me." Ethan frowned. "They can't. I won't let them." Seraphine turned to him, eyes glowing faintly. "Even if it means using your second wish," he hesitated. The idea of using another wish so soon made him uneasy. This wasn't a game. Each gift felt heavy, real, powerful. He couldn't waste them. "No," he said firmly. "I'll find another way." She smiled again. "You really are strange." With a wave of her hand, the cameras short-circuited, lights dimmed to shadows, doors locked. And just like that, they disappeared from the lab. In the next moment, Ethan found himself standing on a quiet hillside, just outside the facility. Stars shimmered above. Cold wind brushed past him. Seraphine floated beside him, feet barely touching the grass. "How did you?" he began. "You asked me to stay," she reminded him. "I go where you go." He looked up at the night sky, then at her glowing figure beside him. "This doesn't feel real," he whispered. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, reaching out. Her fingers brushed his chest, not in a seductive way, but gentle, like she was searching for something invisible. "I feel something in you," she murmured. "Something I've never seen in any human before. Is that good or bad?" "I don't know yet," she replied. "But it frightens me." Her voice trembled slightly, and for the second time, Ethan saw her blush. A being from a realm of raw desire, embarrassed, nervous, even vulnerable. That's when Ethan realized something. Seraphine wasn't just reacting to his wishes, she was changing. Just as the bond had healed him, it was affecting her too, making her feel things that weren't part of her nature. She sat again, this time in the grass, looking up at the stars. "I used to think emotions were tools, weapons. My realm trained us to read hearts so we could manipulate them. I thought I understood humans, but I never met someone like you. You haven't seen Earth yet," he said. "The real Earth, and show me." That sentence lingered in the cold night air. Ethan stared at her glowing figure, then nodded. "Slowly, come with me." Over the next few days, he kept her hidden. They traveled at night, stayed low during the day. He showed her forests, lakes, cities from a distance. She stared at everything with wide, curious eyes. A child in an ancient body. She laughed for the first time when she saw a puppy chase its tail. She cried, real tears when she heard. A mother sang to her baby in a park, and one night, as they sat by a campfire in the woods, she asked him a question. If I wasn't bound to you, would you still want me to stay? Ethan didn't answer immediately, but then he looked her in the eyes and said, yes. She closed her eyes. Her lips trembled, and in that quiet moment, far from cities and labs and military bases, Seraphine changed again. Her glow dimmed just slightly. Her eyes softened. Her heart, once a tool of manipulation, now beat with something real. She'll know. Longer looked like a succubus. She looked human, and somewhere deep in the shadows of the forest, something else stirred, watching, listening. The world had noticed her presence, and it would not stay quiet for long. Asterisk for the first time in her. Long life, Seraphine dreamed. It wasn't a dream of desire or command. It was a quiet dream of campfires and stars, of walking beside a man who never asked for power, only presence. She awoke in a small wooden cabin, hidden deep within a forest Ethan had known since childhood. The cabin was old, forgotten, and half-broken, but it was safe, at least for now. Asterisk. Outside, Ethan chopped wood with steady hands. Morning light cut through the trees, birds sang, squirrel leapt from one branch to another. Seraphine stood silently by the window, watching him. Her glowing skin, once so bright it lit up entire. Rooms had dimmed into a softer violet. Her long black hair no longer floated unnaturally. It fell gently against her shoulders. She was becoming more like them. More human. Later that morning, as they ate quietly near the fire, Ethan spoke without looking up. You seem different. She didn't answer at first. Her fingers ran over the rim of her cup as if searching for words. The bond, she finally said. It's doing more than you think. He raised an eyebrow. How much more? I feel emotions I was never designed to feel. Guilt, shyness. Even. Hunger? Hunger? Ethan asked with a small grin. Like real food? She nodded slowly. This body, this transformation, it's adapting. Becoming something in between your kind and mine. Ethan stared at her. And how do you feel? About that? She looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, terrified. The silence that followed was heavy. He didn't know what to say. She had power beyond his imagination, and yet she was afraid of something as basic as becoming herself. Later that day, they walked deeper into the woods. Seraphine was curious about everything. She touched tree bark. She watched bees fly from flower to flower. She smiled when she saw 2 deer standing in the clearing. It was like watching someone see life for the first time. Ethan taught her things. How to use a spoon, how to catch raindrops on her tongue, how to throw a rock and skip it across the water. She laughed every time she failed, but the peace didn't last. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, they reached the edge of a small abandoned town. Dusty roads, broken windows. Nature had already begun to take it back. Seraphine stood in the center of the street, arms wide, spinning slowly. So much silence, she said softly, and yet not empty. What do you mean? Ethan asked, stepping beside her. There are echoes here, she whispered, of pain, of joy, of goodbye. Her words sent a chill down Ethan's spine. He had never told her, but this town had once been his home. It was evacuated years ago after a toxic spill, a government cover-up. He had lost everything here, his family, his future. It had all started in this place. And now, she had sensed it without a word. How did you know? He asked. Seraphine didn't reply. Instead, her eyes turned toward the sky. A strange ripple moved across the clouds, like a wave in the air. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. She grabbed Ethan's arm. They've found us. Who? He asked quickly. The others, she said. Not humans. Not your military. My kind. Ethan's blood ran cold. Why now? 'Cause I've changed, she said with a steady voice, and they don't allow that. She turned and began walking fast. We must go. But Ethan didn't move. He stared at her, heart pounding. Are they dangerous? They don't feel shame or guilt or love? They serve one purpose: to extract what is broken and restore what is pure. I am broken to them now. Ethan followed her back into the trees. Night came fast. The wind picked up. Strange flickers appeared in the forest, small, floating. Lights like fireflies, but colder, mechanical. Seraphine raised her hand, and the lights vanished. But more came behind them. They won't stop, she said. They've sent watchers. Ethan looked around. What do they want? She said simply, or more specifically, what I've become. He clenched his fists. Then we run. No, she said firmly. Not this time. He turned to her. What do you mean? She looked at him. Not as a cosmic being, not as an alien goddess, but as a woman who had found something worth protecting. I'll use the second gift, she said. No, Ethan snapped. We agreed this is bigger than you and me now. If they take me back, they'll erase what I've learned. I'll be erased. Ethan's chest tightened. She stepped closer, cupping his face gently. I will not let your kindness be my curse. He shook his head, voice trembling. There has to be another way. But the air around them cracked. A tall, ghost-like figure stepped through the trees, skin like black glass, eyes hollow and silver. More followed, silent, cold. Watching, Seraphine stepped forward, her body glowing once again, but not with seduction. With defiance, and Ethan, for the first time, saw who she truly was. Not a succubus, not a tool of desire, but a soul trying to be free. The watchers raised their arms. The wind roared. Energy gathered, and then Seraphine whispered, Forgive me. Blinding light shot from her chest, spreading outward like a wave, shaking the ground. The trees bent. The watchers screamed, and Ethan fell to his knees, covering his eyes. When it was over, the forest was silent. Seraphine stood alone in the clearing, her skin pale, her eyes faint. Her power was drained. But the watchers were gone. She had used the second gift, not for herself, not for Ethan, but for freedom. She turned toward him, barely standing. I have one gift left, she said weakly. Use it wisely. Then she collapsed into his arms, and the stars above seemed to blink, as if watching, as if waiting for what would come next. Ethan sat on the floor of the cabin, Seraphine lying in his lap, her glowing skin now pale like moonlight, her breathing slow and shallow. The fire crackled softly beside them, but its warmth felt distant. Outside, the forest was dead silent, as if the trees themselves were afraid to move. She had saved him. She had saved everything. But at what cost? Ethan gently brushed her hair away from her face. It no longer shimmered like before. Her glow was fading. The second gift, whatever it had done, had drained her of something far deeper than energy. Stay with me, whispered, her eyelids fluttered. I'm here, she said faintly. He let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. You shouldn't have done that. I had to, she replied weakly. If they took me, they would erase all of this. You almost died. I would have, if it meant keeping what I've become. Her fingers slowly reached for his. He took her hand and held it tightly. Her skin felt cold, not like before. Too human. He wrapped her in blankets and sat beside her the entire night, listening to her slow breaths, watching the stars outside. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. He was terrified that if he closed his eyes, she'd disappear. When the first light of dawn broke across the sky, Seraphine finally sat up. Her eyes were softer, quieter, like a fire that had burned too long. I can feel it, she said. The bond is unstable now. What does that mean, the third gift? It might come at a price. Ethan stared at her, and I won't. Use it. You might not have a choice, she said. The bond isn't just between us anymore. Something larger is watching. He frowned. The Watchers. No. Something older. Something beyond even my realm. She stood slowly, walking to the door. She looked out at the trees, the rising sun glowing through the branches. I've never been afraid of my own kind, she whispered, but now I fear myself." Ethan joined her. "What are you really, Seraphine? Not what they made you, not what they told you. What are you under all that?" She turned to him, and for the first time her eyes were wet. "I don't know," she said. They spent the next few days in the cabin. Seraphine began to recover, but the glow never fully returned. Lifting, she still had moments of strength. Lifting heavy logs with ease, moving without sound, but each time she used her powers, she grew weaker afterward. She began sleeping more, eating more. She cried at night. She laughed at silly things. She hugged him when he brought her tea, and once she kissed his forehead and said, "Thank you for not being afraid of me." Ethan began to realize something he hadn't allowed himself to feel before. He was falling for her, not because she was beautiful, not because of her powers, but because she was becoming more human than anyone he had ever met, and she was doing it for him. But deep inside, a question burned in his mind. What would happen when the last gift was used? What would happen if he never used it at all? One evening, while Seraphine rested, Ethan walked into the woods alone. He followed an old deer trail, thinking, remembering. He ended up at the edge of a dried-up riverbed. The place was quiet, still, until he saw it. A mirror, not made of glass, but of moving light, standing in the middle of the riverbed, like it didn't belong there. Ethan stepped closer. In the reflection, he saw himself. But not quite. The reflection moved on its own, speaking with no sound, lips forming words Ethan couldn't hear. Then the figure changed into Seraphine, then into something else, a creature of light and shadow, wings, horns, 1,000 eyes. And then the mirror shattered into dust. Behind him, a voice spoke. "She is not from where you think." Ethan turned fast, heart pounding. A man in a black coat stood beneath the trees, half in shadow. His face was calm. Calm. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded. "A watcher," the man said, "but not of her kind. I come from what came before." Ethan, "Step back. I don't want trouble." "You already have it," the man said quietly. "The bond she formed with you was never supposed to happen. Human soul, succubus thread. It creates something dangerous. She saved me." "Yes," the man said. "And because of that, the final gift will not be a gift. It will be a question." Ethan's fists clenched. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because when the time comes, you must choose between her life and something much greater." The man vanished like smoke. Ethan stood alone in the woods, heart racing, unsure what to believe. When he returned to the cabin, Seraphine was waiting at the door. "You saw something," she said. He nodded. "So did you, didn't you?" She didn't reply. But in her eyes, he saw it. She knew the truth. The 3 gifts weren't rewards. They were tests, and the final one would be the hardest of all. Ethan had always thought of himself as a man of logic. Equations, formulas, rules of energy, that was his world. But ever since Seraphine stepped through that portal, logic had become a fading shadow, replaced by questions that had no scientific answers. And now, as the days passed in the quiet of the forest cabin, one truth became clearer than any calculation. The final gift wasn't a blessing. It was a decision, a burden. A weight. Seraphine rarely spoke about it, but Ethan could feel it growing between them, an invisible thread pulling tighter every day. Her powers were fading. Her once glowing skin had lost most of its light. She laughed less, stared at the stars longer, and sometimes her hands would shake without reason. She was dying, not from injury or illness, but from the transformation itself. Each moment she stayed human, stayed with him. She moved further away from what she once was. And the bond, the mysterious connection between them, was draining her like a slow leak in a ship's hull. One cold morning, Ethan woke to find the bed beside him empty. The fire had died. The door was open. Snow had started falling lightly outside. He found her standing barefoot near the frozen stream behind the cabin, wearing only a thin shawl, her arms wrapped around herself. She stared at her reflection in the water as if trying to recognize the woman looking back. "I used to be afraid of this world," she said without turning. Now I'm afraid to leave it. Ethan placed a coat gently over her shoulders. Then don't. If I stay, she whispered, I disappear. My kind was not made to love. We were shaped to serve, to grant, to feed off desires we did not understand. But now I feel too much. I laugh too easily. I cry too often. And every time I hold your hand, I feel real. He stood silently beside her. I don't regret the first gift, he said. Not for a second. She looked at him finally, her eyes softer than ever. You never asked for anything selfish. That's why the bond chose you. Then help me understand, Ethan said.
Why does it feel like I'm being punished for loving you?
Seraphine didn't answer at first. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal, faintly pulsing with light. Ethan recognized it immediately. It was the same type of alien crystal that had opened the portal all those weeks ago. This is the heart of the bond, she said. There were once many like it, scattered across dimensions. Each one links a gift-bound entity to a mortal soul, but only one bond in all time was ever pure. She placed the crystal into Ethan's hand. Ours, he stared. At the crystal? What happens if I use the third gift? You break the bond, she replied softly. And when the bond breaks, one of us stays. His throat tightened, and the other vanishes. He looked at her, eyes burning. Vanishes how? Death? She shook her head slowly. Worse, forgotten, as if I never existed. No, there's no way around it, Ethan. It's how the bond was built. You were never meant to keep me. I was a lesson, not a reward. That's not fair. No, she said, but it's real. That night, they didn't speak again. They lay beside each other in silence, their fingers gently linked. Ethan couldn't sleep, kept replaying the same question in his head. If you love someone, enough, would you set them free, knowing they'd disappear forever? He couldn't answer it. The next day, something changed. While gathering firewood, Ethan noticed strange footprints in the snow, not animal, not human. Long, narrow, with claw-like edges. He followed them carefully, heart pounding, and then he saw it. A figure in the distance. Out. Watching from behind a tree, tall, hooded, not moving. He dropped the wood and ran back to the cabin. Seraphine, he shouted. They're here. Stepped outside slowly. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the trees. Not watchers, she said. Something older. Something sent to observe the final choice. What do they want? To make sure you choose. Deep hum filled the air. The sky above the trees turned dark, even though the sun was still out. The wind died. The forest held its breath. From the shadows, the hooded figure stepped forward. His voice was cold, ancient. The bond has reached its end, he said. The third gift must be spoken. Ethan stepped in front of Seraphine. I'm not ready. Readiness is irrelevant. Time is a thread, and your thread is fraying. Ethan looked back at Seraphine. She nodded silently, tears in her eyes. You get one wish, the figure said. One desire to shape the rest of your life, but one of you will remain. The other will be erased. Ethan's heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the wind. He looked at Seraphine. She smiled gently, even through her tears. You saved me, she said. Let me return the gift. He shook his head. No, I won't let you disappear. You already did, she said with a soft laugh. The moment you chose kindness, Ethan turned back to the figure, fists clenched. I can't choose. Must, the figure replied, or the bond will consume you both. Silence fell, and then whispered something, 3 words. The forest exploded in light, and Seraphine was gone. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. The light that had burst from Ethan's whispered wish slowly faded, leaving behind nothing but snow-covered ground and the sound of a single heartbeat. His own Seraphine was gone. Not dead, not taken. He raced. He stood in the clearing for a long time, unable to move. The strange, hooded figure who had delivered the choice had vanished with the light. No footprints, no shadow. Not even a trace of the moment that had changed his life forever. Just silence. Ethan fell to his knees in the snow. His breath shook. In the cold, his hands still clenched around the crystal she had given him, now completely dark, lifeless. No pulse. No glow. Just a dead stone. He tried to speak her name, but something strange happened. His lips moved, but the sound didn't come out. He knew there was someone he had lost, someone he had loved, but his mind was beginning to blur the edges. Her name, her face, her voice, slipping like smoke between fingers. That was the price of the third gift. He would live, but memory would rot like fallen leaves. He returned to the cabin slowly, his footsteps heavy, mind fogged. He looked around the bed where they had slept. The cups they had shared, her shawl on the chair, all still there, but his mind couldn't connect to any of it. He stared at the shawl for minutes, knowing it meant something, but the reason stayed just beyond reach. That night, he lit a fire and sat alone. For hours, staring. His chest felt hollow, like something had been torn out, not with pain, but with quiet, unbearable absence, and yet. In his dreams, she appeared, not as a figure of light or power, but as a shadow behind the glass, watching him through memory's cracks. Sometimes she would smile, but never speak. He woke up with tears in his eyes. Every time, days passed, maybe, weeks, he wasn't sure. Ethan returned to his research, not in the labs, but in the forest. He rebuilt his small workstation in the cabin, hooked up old machines, reopened. His notes had one goal now, not to understand alien energy or unlock cosmic portals, but to recover memory. He began mapping his own dreams, tracking the whispers, recording every flash of violet light or voice that echoed in the corners of his mind. His body grew weaker from lack of sleep, but he didn't care. He was a man haunted, not by ghosts, by the feeling that someone had loved him once, and he had let her go. Then one night, something changed. The machines he had rebuilt, crude but sensitive, began to flicker. Strange readings lit up the monitor. It's the same energy signature from the bond, something close, nearby. His heart jumped. He ran into the forest, snow crunching under his boots. The stars above shimmered brighter than usual. And there, at the edge of the dried riverbed, stood a single figure, a woman. Back turned, barefoot in the snow. Hair blowing in the wind, Ethan froze. His mouth opened. Sarup. He stopped. He couldn't say her name, but something deep in his chest ached, a pain so sharp it nearly dropped him to the ground. The woman turned slowly. She was not glowing. She had no horns. No alien marks. Just a human woman. Soft violet skin. Silver eyes dulled. Wearing a plain winter coat. Her expression was blank at first, but then it shifted. Recognition. Faint flickering. She stepped forward. So did he. Closer, closer. Her lips parted slightly. Do I know you? Ethan couldn't breathe. He nodded. I think so, he whispered. Her eyes filled with tears. I've been dreaming of this place. Ethan reached out, hand trembling. Oh. So have I. Their fingers touched. A faint light sparked where their skin met. Just a flicker, not enough. Too blind, but enough to warm the air. I don't know your name, she said softly. I don't know yours either, he replied, voice shaking. But I miss you. She smiled, just barely, and that's when the wind carried a voice through the trees. Not loud, not direct, but real. A whisper. One word. Remember? They both looked up, startled, but there was no one there. Just stars, silence, and the hint, something watching. Not a threat, not a judge, but something curious, as if the universe itself had just broken its own rule. For the first time, a bond had ended. A memory had died, but love remained. Asterisk. Winter's cold had deepened, and the forest lay quiet under a thick blanket of snow. Ethan and the woman he barely remembered stood side by side at the edge of the frozen riverbed. The air was sharp and still, as if the world was holding its breath. They had no names for each other, no memories to share, just the flicker of a connection, a fragile thread between two lost souls. Days passed. They lived simply, rebuilding a life without the past. Ethan taught her to light fires and build shelter. She showed him how to listen to the wind and watch the stars. Together they found comfort in small things, laughter, shared meals, and silent walks beneath ancient trees. Yet beneath their quiet days lay a question neither dared to ask. Who was she really? One evening, as twilight bled into night, a faint glow appeared in the sky, a shimmer of violet light, soft but unmistakable. Ethan looked up, heart tightening. "It's her," he whispered. "Or at least, a part of her." The woman watched. Two eyes wide but calm. "Do you remember anything now?" He shook his head slowly. "Nothing clear, but I feel hope." Suddenly the ground trembled lightly beneath their feet. The snow shifted, swirling into a circle of light. From it stepped a figure, not the fierce, glowing succubus Ethan first met, but a radiant being, softer and wiser, her eyes full of warmth and sadness. "Seraphine," Ethan breathed, tears welling. The woman beside him smiled sadly and stepped aside. Fading like mist, Seraphine approached him, her form more real than any dream. "I am the memory you lost," she said gently, "and the love you never forgot." Ethan reached out, but she placed a hand on his chest, stopping him. "The bond between us was never meant to last forever," she explained. "It was a lesson in kindness, sacrifice, and choice. You used the gifts not for power, but for love." She smiled brighter. "That made you stronger than any ruler or warrior." "But why the forgetting?" he asked, voice trembling. "To protect you. The bond's final gift was a test, not to keep me by your side, but to let me go freely without pain or regret." She knelt beside him. "Your heart remembered even when your mind could not. That is true magic." Ethan wiped his tears. "Will you stay?" Seraphine shook her head slowly. "No. I belong to many worlds now, but one part of me will always live in you." She touched his forehead lightly, and suddenly, memories flooded back, soft laughter, quiet moments, the warmth of shared hope. Ethan smiled, feeling whole again. Seraphine stood and looked toward the stars. "I will return when the time is right, when love calls us both again." Then, with a final glow, she faded into the night sky, becoming one with the stars. Ethan watched long after she was gone. He was no longer alone. He carried her. In his heart, the beautiful succubus, who granted him 3 gifts and taught him that the greatest gift of all is choosing love, even when it means letting go. The forest whispered around him, live with promise, and the universe smiled. The end. Asterisk.